Jess, welcome to the Wishbeads podcast. My listeners have just heard your absolutely outstanding resume. And I have to say, I just was so taken with your work because I think it really exemplifies so much of what many of us who have had twists and turns in our journey and different chapters in our life, and yet stepping into what our gift is and how we can help others. When I read your story, I was like, that is my kind of lady. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Alexa, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for my Wishbead bracelet, which I do have on every single day.
I know. Well, it is awesome. I was grateful that I think it was Christina, who I work with for PR, who introduced us. And of course, I was immediately blown away by you and your platform. And you even used it in one of your retreats, actually, at the beginning of this pandemic.
Yeah.
But I think most recently you shared a story on Instagram where you were talking about, I believe the story had to do with visioning your apartment. And now, not through Wishbeads, but through your work with the power of intention and visioning.
Yeah.
Was that the story that you had shared?
Yeah, I did recently share that. I was talking about, I have a very strong opinion on vision boards. So I make one every year. I've made a vision board probably for the last decade and a half, but I don't like to call it a vision board. I actually call it an action board. And yeah, there's a lot of intention behind it. So I think I had put up a story or a post about the difference between sort of this vision board versus action board and what my husband and I do every single year on New Year's. And I would love to share that if you
Please, that's absolutely,
yeah.
I would love to hear that.
So let me just start by saying, if you're someone who makes vision boards, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not attacking you. I'm just opening a different way of thinking about it. So I'd love you to just perk up and listen in to see if it's something you can maybe implement in the future for your next vision board that you're going to make. So oftentimes vision boards or vision board parties are a bunch of people getting together with a bunch of magazines, and they'll cut stuff out of the magazines, whether it's pictures or words, and glue it down to a poster board or stick it up on like a cork board. And the concept or idea behind it is that you then paste it in your bedroom, or you post it up in your office or your kitchen refrigerator. And every day that you see these different things on your vision board, hopefully you can just kind of manifest them and they come true one day. All of a sudden you're living in your vision board, and that's great. But I believe that you need to take it one step further. So I am a very strong believer and advocate for things like manifesting and visualizing. But the key that I've learned over the last decade and a half is that with that manifesting, with that visualizing, there has to be action. There has to be steps that you take. So you can't just wish it into existence. You have to wish it into an existence with a little bit of strategy. So about 6.5, 7 years ago, my husband and I started doing what we call an action board. And the difference here is we're very intentional with what we put on our board. So we do this every year on New Year's. We stay in for New Year's Eve. Please take this tradition and run with it if you so please, because we really, truly, we just adore it. So we stay in on New Year's. About the week leading up to New Year's, or a couple weeks leading up to New Year's, we start to gather intentionally things that we either want to do or create for the next year. So places we want to travel, specific amounts of money we want to make, things we want to do with the money that we're going to make. Maybe it's podcasts I want to be on, or angles I want to take in my business. So we start strategizing, and we actually Google image these different things. So let's say we want to go to Iceland, we'll Google image a picture of Iceland, and we'll stockpile all of these different images, even down to blank checks that we're going to then fill in. I've even gone as far as photoshopping myself onto magazine covers when I was in the fitness industry.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. So for the couple weeks leading up to New Year's, we start to gather all this information. And then on New Year's Eve, we crack a bottle of wine, we order Thai food, we do the same thing every year, and we sit down both with our vision boards and we cut out the different things that we have printed intentionally. We take it one step further though. As we stick them onto our boards, we take turns and we actually explain to one another by reverse engineering how we're going to make those things happen. What steps, what things do we need to do to make that thing happen that we're putting up on the board? And so we usually, I'll create my board, we do them at the same time, and then one of us will present to the other, and then we flip-flop, the other person presents. And at that point, we kind of put a bow on it, talk to each other about how it's going to happen, how can we support one another in doing so, which of those things on the board actually are collaborative, And it's funny too, because we don't show each other our stuff until we're ready to present. And so it's really interesting to see how many overlapping things we've picked, or
Oh, I love that.
vacations we're going to take. Yeah. But we really have an open conversation about it, and we get excited about it. And, with one bottle of wine, it can get really exciting. And we just start to really dream big and play this kind of crazy, stupid idea game and get intentional about the action behind it. And we know that what we're putting on our board oftentimes is way bigger than we think we could actually do. And that's great, because if you fall short, you're probably still ahead of where you would have been. So we dream really big. And then one of the really cool things that we do is we do this whole experience during New Year's. We then have our boards up. Mine's in front of me right now. It's in my office. And throughout the year, as the things happen, I remove them. I use a cork board. So as the things happen, I'll remove them from the board and I leave them in a little pile next to my vision board. For this coming New Year's, we review everything that did happen. We assess the things that did not. We check and see maybe why they didn't happen, or maybe our goals just changed. Maybe our path changed. And then we actually decide if we're going to keep those things on the board for the year moving forward, because sometimes they kind of stick around. And sometimes you look at them and you're like, that's what I wanted to do? That's crazy. I've grown so much, I'm not even interested in that anymore. So that is essentially how we, create our action boards.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Obviously, that I'm in love with all of this.
Yeah.
I think it is so powerful. And I also resonate in the sense that, when I saw the movie The Secret, my biggest issue with that film in particular, while I do love the notion of the law of attraction, and there's a lot of common sense that the idea that energy is contagious, and there's a lot of common sense things about it, things that people can relate to. But my biggest issue was, I believe, one moment where there was one gentleman, after he had made his vision, was sitting back in a lazy boy chair and sort of waiting for this thing to come to him. Maybe it was this red Corvette. I don't even remember. But that is actually why, as I was creating the tools and the products around Wishbeads, why I wrote an entire book called Wishwork. Because I know in my own experience that, yes, I have done quite a few accomplishments in my time. And it was not because I sat back and just wished for them. Yeah. It's because I took consistent action. I dreamed big. I opened myself up to possibility. I jumped when I needed to jump. I reassessed, all of those things. Yeah. But what I love is also that continued exploration and the attention and even the strategy around anchoring yourself in your big, bold wishes for the year. Yeah. I love that. And I think that even though I do so much strategizing and visioning and things like that, even with my husband, who is a partner in a lot of the things that I work on, I do love the ritual of seeing it and putting it in. And I love the idea of pitching it and like discussing it. That I have never done before. I love that. Yeah, I think it's really cool. And I also think it'd be cool to do with my kids, to sort of say, what do you want to do this year?
For sure. Yeah. And what an exciting way to open up the conversation too, to talk about those big, scary goals and how are you going to make it happen and what is the plan, and just understanding how to reverse engineer or back into a goal. I mean, if I had children, I would teach them for sure. I would do that.
Definitely. And not to be intimidated or just sit back and look at somebody else, in their minds, they're really into YouTubers, and sit back and think, oh, like, I couldn't do that. They have millions of followers or whatever. Sure. I know this is a very big thing for young people in the YouTube world, but really saying like, well, what would it take for me to really do that? My son plays baseball. He's really bummed that baseball is not really happening right now, but it's still holding the idea like, okay, well, if you really do want to play baseball, let's say in college or beyond, like, what are you doing right now to be in the joy of that experience, even if we're in quarantine times?
Exactly. And I think it's such an important practice of delayed gratification, which is something that is really difficult, especially for younger children now, because we live in such an instant world. So this is a practice of delayed gratification, as well as, patience and having grace with yourself and healthy competition with yourself. Like, there's so many different things that come up, because what happens if you don't accomplish the thing on the board? What is the coping skill to deal with that? Or did you change paths, and is that okay? And so it's working through a lot of, guilt, shame, fear, all the different emotions.
Yeah. And the basic skill set of staying on task,
Yeah.
the consistency, and this, and I'm sure you teach this to all of your clients, and the idea that sometimes it's not going to feel fun and exciting, that sort of rush of the creative inspiration or the big launch or whatever. So much of the making of a wish happen is really just, pull up your sleeves, sit down in the chair, continually moving forward. And that too is a skill and a habit that you can cultivate and nurture and learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jess, I also want to talk about, about the chapters of your career. I am totally fascinated with the stories of, and I'm sure you watch this too, the How I Built This.
Yeah.
Do you know How I Built This? Right. So How I Built This, the podcast, it's always charting out the entrepreneurial journey of very successful business leaders. And all of them have a lot of through lines. My own story, and one that I kind of stepped back and I've been thinking about, especially as I've been giving so much advice to people in this time of great pivoting, great reimagining, is the fact that all of it counts. And that even though when we're in it, in these very distinct chapters of our life, now is the time to really synthesize all of that, to reimagine. And so if you wouldn't mind just going a little bit deeper about your journey that took you from your passion about fitness and the study that you took, you're learning about kinesiology, celebrity trainer, and then then you were teaching. So it's all like, there's all these components that now make up your very successful career.
Yeah.
And just as you spoke about this instant gratification, I think many people have this perspective right now that like, oh, I should have done this 10 years ago, or I just couldn't possibly build this now. It's too late. Yeah. How do you value, as you're working with your clients, the idea of embracing this sort of meandering journey that sometimes people go on to get to where they are right now so that they can leap forward into the next possibility?
Oh, I love this so much. And this is something I feel like I talk about every day, because my clients on the daily will say things like, I'm so behind. And my response is, no, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're exactly where you should be. And I don't love the word should. I try to remove the word should. And the interesting thing is, it's a little bit of a blend of woo-woo and spirituality for people. So I get an eye roll a lot of times, but you could not have possibly done the thing 10 years ago that you think you were supposed to do if you didn't go through the things that you went through to get you here. And so one of my favorite quotes is Steve Jobs, and it's, you can't connect the dots looking forwards. You can't connect the dots looking backwards. You can only connect them looking forward. So you have to just trust that they're going to appear. And for me, I'm a visual person, so I imagine stepping stones. And so you see these stepping stones and like a frog leaping from one stone to the next. And when you leap from one stone to the next, you have to just kind of hope that you're going to land on the next one. And some of the stones that are off the beaten path don't really make sense. And you get caught up in the woods, or you're too far deep in the river and you're like, how did I end up over here? But then when you're on the present stone and you look backwards, you realize that you couldn't have gotten to the stone you're standing on had you not gone off into the river or off into the woods, because in fact there was no other stone to jump onto, right? And so
yeah, I love that.
The path that I have taken, looking back, it does make sense now. When I was in it, it did not at all. So you touched on a couple of things, but I went to college for my doctorate of physical therapy, and I had wanted to be a physical therapist since I was 8 years old. I was a competitive gymnast growing up, so I grew up in PT. It was super second nature. Love science, love the body. And so that's what I went to school for. I declared a major going in and went to school for that, went into my grad school program for my doctorate. And while I was in undergrad, my parents had sort of encouraged me to get a teaching degree to quote unquote fall back on, because I had always coached gymnastics. I already was a personal trainer. I got certified the day I turned 17. So they were kind of just like, get the teaching degree, you could just have it. From there, did a year in grad school, realized I wasn't aligned and I wasn't sure why. And in hindsight, I realized I was working through a 10-year battle with an eating disorder, and I sort of needed to just focus on myself. So I took a leave of absence, which I never went back to. So I am a dropout. I dropped out of my doctorate program. In that time, I needed a job. So I just went back into training full time. I had been working as a trainer and a group fitness instructor all through college and the end of high school. So was working as a trainer full time and had always made my own clothing, my own leotards, my own accessories. My mom is an artist, and so it's just something that I did. And in the time that I was working as a personal trainer, I was using my free time in creative expression to just, make things. And every time I would leave the house, whether I was running an errand or going to, a nightclub, people would ask me, oh, where did you get that thing? Or where did you buy that purse? And the answer was always, I made it. And so from I made it turned into selling accessories, which is really funny. A lot of my clients at the time had encouraged me to set up a little holiday boutique at the gym that I worked for. And I did. And I had nothing to sell. I had the few prototypes, the ones that I wore. They were all handbags. And so I brought in 5 or 6 handbags, put them on a table, and figured if someone wants one, I'll just take an order. They could pick the colors they want and I'll go make it. I actually had my mom come with me that day. And we sat there for the full day of this little holiday boutique. And by the end of the day, I had sold $6,000 worth of orders.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was like in a flash moment, I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to go into fashion. And so I applied to FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology here in New York City, which is arguably like the best accessory, fashion school.
Yep.
I got in, which I couldn't believe it. So I'm like, okay, universe, I hear you. I'm going to go for it. There were thousands of applicants. They let in 30 people. And so at that point, I had already done undergrad, part of grad school, and now I was back in undergrad for fashion. It made no sense. I moved into the city, lived on my brother's couch for a year. He's older than me. I was living on his couch and going to fashion school. And in the time I was going to school, since I was a little bit older, I had internships the entire year because I knew when I graduated, I needed to get a job immediately.
Right. So very strategic. Yeah. I love it.
Of course. And I was personal training. That's how I was paying my way through.
Because you had all the time in the world, like school, internship, working. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so I worked with Heidi Klum and XOXO and Jordache, and it was great. I got a really great experience. But at the end of my first year, I was really unhappy. And at the time, I guess I was 24 or so, I felt like I had failed over and over. I'd worked through this eating disorder. I didn't end up graduating with my doctorate. I didn't like fashion. And here I was in my mid-20s, still without a job, still not knowing what I wanted to do. All of my friends were getting engaged and, moving out, and they had real jobs. And I was living on my brother's couch. And so I heard in the back of my head, my parents, and they were like, use the teaching degree. So I applied for a job as a teacher in one school district. And I told myself, if I get the job as a teacher, I'll go do that. Because I had always coached. So I love kids. So I'm like, it makes sense. Yeah. Got the job. And so I ended up, the day that I was offered a teaching job, I actually was offered a job at Shape magazine to work in their fitness and fashion department, which was ultimately the place I wanted to be. It just didn't feel great. I didn't feel like I was making enough impact. And so I went with what I felt was the safer job, took the teaching job, got the benefits and summers off and you name it. And I stayed there for 8 years working as an elementary school phys ed and health teacher.
Amazing.
Of course, while I was a teacher, I still worked as a trainer. And in that course of 8 years, I had many different side hustles. I didn't realize that I was an entrepreneur. I don't have entrepreneurs in my family. That's not something we have. I didn't know that was an option. But looking back again, I'm like, oh, well, of course. I was running boot camps on my own. I had gotten into network marketing to learn about sales and marketing. I had aligned myself with a different fitness company. I was hustling. I created a company called Fit Trips, which were women's monthly, essentially fitness field trips. And all these different things I was doing over the course of the 8 years of teaching. I was emailing workout plans to people and they were snail mailing me checks.
I love it.
Yeah, like virtual
it's the perfect training ground. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Exactly.
And you can't go to a business school like that. There's no degree.
Yeah. And I've never taken a business class. Never, not once.
Yeah. No, me neither.
But during those 8 years, I just got a taste for kind of what else was possible. The last 3 years in my job, I was very, very unhappy. And I just felt like there was a really low ceiling and there was a cap to what I could do. And I felt like my hands were tied. And so when I decided to leave teaching, I actually had no plan. The plan was just make it work, figure it out. You have to
just jump to that next stone.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the plan. The plan was do whatever you have to do. If it's training clients 16 hours a day, if it's being a barista at Starbucks, if it's working as a waitress, like the plan was make it happen.
Oh my God. Jess, okay, there's so many things that I absolutely love about your story. And I think that people hearing this story right now is absolutely so critical because you touch on a few things that normally stop people. And that is the messages that we get growing up and that are in society, which is better have a plan B, better back up, better be safe, not sorry, finish your degree. Oh, you're a dropout. It's terrible to live on someone's couch instead of celebrating, oh my God, what a beautiful relationship you have with your brother. What a time that you'll never, ever forget, your hustling years in New York and overcoming, like feeling the fear or the negativity or the overwhelm and doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. And my God, is that not an appropriate reminder for these times that we're in right now? And going back to your idea of these stepping stones, how true. We don't know, but we do know how, I can't take it for granted that everybody knows, but you have this idea to look within and say, where am I? And how do I feel about what I'm doing? And if I could do anything else, what would that look like? And am I willing to dive into the sandbox and just go and make it happen?
Yeah.
And you don't need a degree. And nothing against people who do go to business school and whatnot, but when you actually do the work, there is no business school that can prepare you for actually doing the thing. Yeah. Whether you're creating digitally or coaching or creating physical products, it is in the doing. And I can tell you because I've done them.
Yeah. And in the last 3 years, I have invested over 150,000 in coaching programs, masterminds, the amount of books that I've read, podcasts that I've listened to, events that I've gone to. This has been 10, 15 years in the works. So yes, I've done the work, like you said. I just didn't go to a traditional business school yet.
Yes. Important clarification. And I think you're right. And I do want to touch on something that I know that you help with your clients. Mm-hmm. And I think that you can certainly help the people that are listening here. And that is this idea that when you do well, success financially and with ambitious goals, you are actually in a position to make a big impact in the world. Yes. And I was so taken with that in your own work that you are doing work with Pencils for Promise. Yeah. Did I just say that correctly?
Pencils of Promise.
Yeah, Pencils of Promise. Sorry. Yeah. And interestingly enough, in Ghana, Africa, just a small connection here is that my new sea glass collection or recycled glass collection is actually made in Ghana. Yeah. Not the whole bracelet, just the beads. Are handmade beads from Ghana. It's an interesting connection. But I love this idea. Can you talk about what the energy of financial abundance and success that you talk about with your clients? Yeah. And because I think right now, people are a little bit shaken up by this time. Yeah. And maybe people are thinking a little bit like, how can I take care of myself right now? Sure. Instead of giving ourselves permission, even with our imagination, our hearts and minds, to say like, how big could this get? How happy could I be? How successful can I be right now? So would you mind sharing a little bit about how, when you raise the stakes in your own life, what the ripple effect of that is?
Yeah. And that's like straight from our mission statement. So our mission is actually to cause a ripple effect and inspire change for generations to come beyond my or our singular actions. And this is through impact. And I have a strong belief that your income is a direct reflection of the impact that you're making. And, people argue with me on that sometimes because, for example, when I was a teacher, I made a lot of impact. I still have students that I talk to, and it's been 3 years since I left. I had hundreds of students. And who's to say that I wasn't making a massive impact? I was, but I was not making a massive income because, again, there's a cap there. So this is more about when you're maybe out on your own entrepreneurship, when there's no ceiling for you. But there is a correlation between your impact and your income. And what I teach and what I believe is that impact is first, income comes second. With that income, your job is then to invest. And that's kind of the cyclical thing that we focus on.
Yep.
And when I left teaching, I had made a promise to myself, my husband, my students, that moving forward, impact was going to be the driving force. Whatever I was going to create, I had no idea. When I left teaching, I did not become a business coach. I left teaching and I stepped into health and fitness full time. I was doing in-person celebrity personal training here in New York City. I was doing online stuff, all in health and fitness. The business coaching kind of accidentally appeared. And so every decision that we make for the company is just based around impact. And how is this going to change one life? And how is that one life going to then change someone else's life? Because even in the simplest form, if I've said something on this podcast that resonated with a listener and they go and share it with a spouse, a loved one, a family member, a child, that's the ripple effect.
Yeah.
That's the impact. And so if one person can learn something from it, and now on a bigger scale, this is with income. So what I teach to my clients, I call them students, but what I teach to my clients, they then go and they create income, and that income is paying their rent, putting food on the table, putting their kids through college. I mean, it's insane when I think about it. And so when I left teaching, I made this commitment to myself. My husband was on board. He's incredible. We happened to just divine timing. Everything sort of fell into place. We actually had honeymooned in Africa, and we fell in love with Africa. And when we were there, we went into different school villages and had decided that we wanted to get involved, didn't know how. Of course, when I came home, the book Promise of a Pencil was gifted to me, which is Adam Braun's book. And it's all about how he started Pencils of Promise. One thing sort of serendipitously led to another. And I was sitting at a dinner with a bunch of strangers, and I was talking to the man who was sitting next to me. And I said, and I have this company called Fit Trips that I spoke of earlier. And every month we give back to a different charity. But really, recently I've realized, this was after like 3 years of running the company, I said, I think I want to just start giving to one charity so I can make a bigger impact. And he smiled. He said, oh, cool. Do you know what charity? And I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do Pencils of Promise. I recently read a book. Have you ever heard of it? And he just busted open with like the biggest smile, ear to ear. And he said, of course, I'm the tech advisor for Pencils of Promise.
Right.
I said, of course you are.
Of course you are.
A random dinner with a random stranger.
Right.
And that led to, do you want me to introduce you to the CEO? And so it was kind of a no-brainer that we got involved with them. And I'm actually thrilled and proud and humbled to say that about a week and a half ago, we found out that we will actually be building a school in Ghana. We break ground next week.
That's amazing. I'm so happy. That is incredible.
Yeah. Thank you.
I absolutely love it. And it's funny that, the universe gives you these signs and these moments, these like sort of aha moments of coincidence.
Sure.
And that is to me that wink from the universe of like, yep, you're on the right path.
Yep.
Like, here you go, and here you go, and here you go. And when you pay attention, because that's really all it is training your mind to pay attention, to welcome those opportunities, to almost ask for the signs of affirmation. It just gives you that assurance to help you take the next action.
It's so funny that you just said that. When I was getting ready to leave my job and I was on the fence about it, it's really scary. I had a great job. Summers off. I mean, I was tenured, you name it. I was reading, or I had read, I believe it's The Universe Has Your Back by Gabby Bernstein. It's one of her books. And she talks in there about picking a sign. And so when you're reading the book, she prompts you like, whatever comes to your mind right now, that's your sign. So what came to my mind was a giraffe. And at the time I was like, should I leave my job? Am I crazy? Everyone's saying I'm crazy. Why would I leave? And so I asked the universe for a sign. And the next day in school, I'm walking down the hallway. And at the time we had a huge bulletin board in the main hallway outside the office with the 340 students and their families. It was pictures of everyone's families. It was a diversity bulletin board. And on this bulletin board, every time you walk by, you see a new family. I mean, 340 students, every time you walk by, you see something new. And it was up all year. And in that bulletin board, there were also little quotes that teachers had printed and cut out. And I asked for a sign that day. I asked the universe, and I'm walking down the hallway, and smack right in front of my face, it's something I'd never seen. And this was November. So we had been in school for a couple months. It was a giraffe, and he was painted all rainbow colors. And it said something to the effect of, you're too something to fit. You're born to stand out. That's what it said. You're born to stand out. I actually took a picture of it and I've shared it before on social media. And that was, one of my signs. It was one of them. It was one of them for sure.
Yeah.
And how funny that giraffes are in Africa.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And again, you can look backwards and connect those dots or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. So I want it, as we're sort of wrapping things up soon, I just wanted you to share a little bit with our audience, because I know you're a big fan of Wishbeads. You're always wearing your Wishbeads. How have you integrated Wishbeads into all these beautiful tools that you share with yourself in your own life and with your students?
Yeah. So I do always have them on, and I have them on now. I have multiple papers written and rolled up inside my Wishbeads, and they're beyond mantras or affirmations. They're really future casting is what I have in here. So I write as though it's already happened. So I write about my future self as though it's happened. And so that's what I have in here, with one paper also, more of a money mantra that I have in here as well, that I say to myself every single day. The first time I was introduced to Wishbeads, I had them at a retreat that I was hosting. And this was a retreat that I was hosting with 6 and 7 figure earners. So a small group of women, 10 women who are already doing 6 and 7 figures in their business, and they're all entrepreneurs. And we did one of your activities, really. And we sat down and we had talked about kind of setting the tone. This was at the beginning of the year. Like you said, it was actually the weekend everything shut down in COVID.
Yeah.
We all had to leave California a day early to get on flights to get home. So it was a hectic time for sure, but we had talked about kind of future casting activities. We had done some journaling prompts. We had done a long visualization and meditation together, and then sat around, wrote out our wishes, put them into our bracelets, all put them on each other. And, just that exercise alone, and talking about how we can do that exercise, not just once with the bracelet, but how can you incorporate it into your morning routine every day, or maybe it's a monthly check-in with yourself or a quarterly check-in with yourself. A lot of the girls that I work with in that particular container have teams as well. So how can they bring that back to their teams that they work with? And so for me, when I put the bracelet on every day, because I do take it off every night, I sort of say what's in it to myself as I put it on. And it's like, I can't put it on if I don't say it. So I'm making sure that I'm saying it over and over. And it's more than an affirmation. It's really a statement for the future.
Yeah. And I love actually the vibration of your voice. So it's the intention of your touch. I mean, it's really activating your senses and leaving this imprint in your mind, in your body, that it just keeps it in the front of your attention. Yeah. And I think that in so many ways, this type of teaching, people can think, oh, it's woo woo, or, they don't want to believe it, but that's actually fear blocking us from just giving it a try.
Yeah.
That's actually why I made it jewelry. And I have to tell you, one fun thing is that I'm launching, well, by the time this airs, it will have already launched, but at the time of this recording in early August, I'm launching my children's collection next week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so exciting.
Exciting.
Because I feel like, and you can appreciate this as a former teacher to young people, you're always teaching, but that this idea that if you start teaching the power of intention and understanding that wishing is not the stuff of make-believe, but it's just a way to connect with your deep desires or a feeling of comfort and hope and positivity, it lights you up. And that energy then you bring into your day.
Yeah.
And so I'm just so excited. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the work that you're doing, especially now. I mean, you've even inspired me. I've been a long time online teacher, and I actually just recently relaunched my site. You and I spoke months ago about me doing courses and a membership, and all of that is like in the works, because
Amazing.
It's time to really go back to the things that I'm passionate about and the teaching that I've been doing for years with literally, I don't think I meant 110,000 students around the world now, and start to say, you know what, we're going to take this to the next level, because there is work to be done right now. There's ways to help people. And when we find that flow inside of us, it does create this ripple effect.
Yeah.
And we can be the helpers out there right now. Absolutely. Saying that there is another way. There is another way.
Yeah, I love that. And that's all that business is. I think people complicate it. Like, if you have a solution to a problem, That's a business.
It's a business.
That's a business. And we all have solutions because we all have different gifts. We all have different knowledge. We all have different things that we're just innately good at or that we just know. And like, that's it. If you have a solution to someone's problem, that's it. It can be a business.
Yeah. And then like you hire people to teach you how to do it.
Yep.
And you hire people to help you make it happen. And suddenly you're in the flow of creating this thing and you're like, whoa. And while it might be easy to be like, oh, I should have done this 10 years ago. Sure. No, you are right where you need to be right now. It's the right time. The right people are going to show up. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. And I was just talking to a friend yesterday and she said to me, you know what, Lex, it is time for me to wish bigger because I had an experience with a new job that she's working in. And she said, I'm standing there in this showroom and I'm literally living a moment that would seem impossible to me when like 2 years ago. And she's like, no, I think it was even a year ago. And she's like, and here I am living it, having this like quiet pinch me moment. And I thought to myself, my God, if I can manifest this, I should really start wishing bigger.
Yeah.
And I got so excited. So she and I we're going to talk about what her next wish is.
Amazing.
But it's pretty exciting. And so it's exciting to hear your story, share your story with anyone who's going to be listening to this and to continue to support one another as we step into this wild time, this 2020 time where we're looking at things with new eyes and seeing where we can go next, you know?
I love it. It's super exciting. And I'm excited to see your kids line come out. I actually have your website open right now.
Awesome. Well, it's going to go live soon, but we do have, I have a wonderful relationship with another company called Uncommon Goods. They have beautiful, beautiful products. They're a big supporter of Wishbeads. They are actually, the kids line is live on their site. And it actually went live on their site before it's going live on mine. And in 48 hours, 2 out of the 6 styles sold out.
Wow.
With no marketing, not even an announcement, zero marketing. Amazing. And I was like, maybe we're on to something. So it's pretty exciting. I've got some really, really, really cool things in the pipeline, especially for my kids. So, my kids line, my future, my out there kids, not my actual kids. They've got some other fun things, but it's great. It's so exciting just to talk with you, to know you, to be cheering you on from the sidelines, and then, introducing, other people to your work, because it does take guidance. It takes mentorship. It takes a team of people cheering you on. And I'm just so psyched for the beautiful work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And right back at you. It's the ripple effect it truly is. And for just helping make the concept of kind of this visualization and manifestation a little bit more grounded for people. Because I think a lot of people do think it's a little bit too woo-woo, and it's not. It's not.
No,
it doesn't need to be.
It's really not. It's really not.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So to all of our listeners and viewers, I have all the links to learn more about Jess. You can find her website at jessglazer.com. You can find her on Instagram. I'll have links. What's the best way for people to just get to know you, to head straight over to your website?
Probably Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. I'm on there every day, chat with everybody in the DMs. So you can come DM me. I'm at jess.glazer, Glazer. And I love talking to people.
Oh, yay. So go talk to Jess. She's on the gram. So we've got these tools to make reaching out to people super, super easy, which is fantastic. And dream big, everybody. Your dreams may very well come true. You deserve for them to come true. And when your dreams come true, everybody wins. It is truly a ripple effect of goodness. So thank you, Jess, for being on the podcast. It has been a blast and a pleasure.
Thank you.